Right now, Russia is collapsing from every side. In occupied Donbas, people are left without water, and Kremlin purpose at fighting them just for trying to survive. Zelensky hands Trump a $90 billion weapons request, maybe even Tomahawks on the list. Trump himself says it clear Russia's economy is falling apart, and that's the biggest progress in this war. And while Moscow weakness chaos spread in Europe, mystery drones just shut down Copenhagen Airport, forcing 35 flights to divert. Welcome to Ukraine. Today I'm Zarosava Kolesnikova, and tonight we break down how Russia is losing on the battlefield at home and abroad. No water in Donbas. Russia finds people for survival. On occupied Donbas, the Russian regime just hit a new low. People are being fined for dairying water from heating system just to survive the winter. Locals are trapped in humanitarian disaster, left without answers from Moscow, and instead of helping, occupation officials punish anyone who dares to protest. How bad is the crisis, and why is the Kremlin turning survival into a crime? Full story in our report.
This is the Kalmius River. Before the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022, it was an important waterway for the Donetsk and Zaporizhzhia regions of Ukraine, providing drinking and industrial water supply to cities. Now the river looks more like a stream and is polluted with sewage. Springs are drying up throughout the Donetsk and Luhansk regions, and those who complain about the lack of water are repressed.
One of the founders and ideologists of the DPR, Andrei Pershing, said that a woman who recorded an appeal to Putin complaining about the inaction of the DPR leadership and asking him to deal with Pushilin and his gang of MMMers was eventually convicted and fined for allegedly participating in an illegal rally. And now they are planning to arrest her altogether.
The water crisis in the Donetsk region is directly linked to Russian aggression. The Russian Federation Army blew up two large dams, the Karlovka and Kakhovka dams. As a result, the water balance in the south and east of Ukraine has been completely disrupted.
People who naturally want water, who need to flush the toilet, bathe their children, go to houses, they drive people out. It comes to fights, to swearing, to using foul language. How can people be driven to this?
The Russian army destroyed the vital water infrastructure of the Siversky Donets-Donbas Canal. It stretches for more than 130 kilometers, supplied the region with over 90% of its water, and was the main water artery for Donetsk and the surrounding area. The occupying authorities tried to solve the problem by building a new line from Rostov. However, even at the planning stage, it was clear that the Don-Donbas Canal would not meet the region's needs. According to local residents, if until June water was at least partially supplied, now it is completely absent in many districts of Donetsk.
For years, they ignored issues of infrastructure restoration, repairs, and the construction of new water pipelines, while the Russian army relentlessly destroyed the Donbas water supply system with bombings. In the 21st century, the cities of the occupied part of Donbas are living in conditions of a humanitarian catastrophe. The responsibility for this lies solely with the Russian Federation, which brought war and devastation to Ukrainian lands. From a statement by the Center for Countering Disinformation under the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine on Telegram.
One of the water-saving measures in hospitals and educational institutions has been the closure of restrooms. Residents of the occupied territory are complaining about this on social media. Many schools have installed water tanks on their premises, but water still has to be conserved. To do this, in-person classes are being reduced, Igor says.
Hospitals, kindergartens, and educational institutions are the first to suffer in these conditions. Their staff are forced to carry water in buckets if it is delivered at all. Ordinary residents are having the hardest time. I can't even imagine what it's like for lonely, elderly people, women, people with disabilities, and the sick. Igor, a resident of Donetsk, in an interview with Medusa.
The water supply situation in temporarily occupied Mariupol is becoming critical. The city's only source of water, the Starokrimsky reservoir, is rapidly losing volume. Even the Russian occupiers themselves admit it will take 10 months to restore the Starokrimsky reservoir. That's why people are being told to collect rainwater, according to the Center for National Resistance.
Only 15% of reserves remain in the Starokrimsky reservoir. Instead of 45 million tons, there are now only 7 million. 9 more reservoirs have dried up and wells and boreholes are running dry. Once again, the Kremlin proves that residents of the temporarily occupied territories are being left to survive on their own, while Moscow is only concerned with extracting resources and producing propaganda images. From a statement by the Center for National Resistance on Telegram.
On the eve of the heating season, the occupation authorities are introducing restrictions in advance. It is obvious that people will drain water from the heating system for household needs. For this, they will be fined 15,000 rubles. Victoria Chistyukina for Freedom TV channel.
Zelensky gives Trump $19 billion weapon request, Tomahawks included. President Volodymyr Zelensky just dropped a bombshell. Ukraine handed US President Donald Trump a billion-dollar weapons list. In October, a Ukrainian team will head to Washington for technical talks on buying new weapons. Zelensky also reached the media report that Kyiv asked for Tomahawk missiles. Will America say yes? And is Ukraine about to get game-changing weapons? Full story in report.
Ukraine has conveyed all its wishes and requests regarding weaponry to U.S. President Donald Trump as part of a major arms deal, said Volodymyr Zelensky. As for long-range Tomahawk missiles, he did not specify any details.
Ukraine would have used other weapons if...
Ukraine would have used different weapons if the country had them, specifically not strikes but responses. As for what Ukraine wants from the United States, all of that is included. We have conveyed to the U.S. President with details and illustrations what Ukraine wants. And all of this in principle is provided for in our major $90 billion agreement. But we are ready for a separate type of weapon, including long-range ones. I can't share more details, it's a very sensitive issue. According to the British newspaper The Telegraph, during a meeting with Donald Trump at the UN General Assembly in New York, Volodymyr Zelensky allegedly requested Tomahawk missiles. Later, in an interview with Axios, the head of the Ukrainian state said that he had asked the US president for a new weapon system that would force Putin to start negotiations. But he did not specify which one exactly. According to Volodymyr Zelensky, Donald Trump responded to this request by saying, "We will work on it." Already on September 27th, the president of Ukraine announced a visit to the United States by a Ukrainian delegation led by Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko in October to hold technical meetings on the purchase of weapons.
We discussed the main issues and coordinated them with President Trump. Now we are moving on to practical implementation. We had an agreement to purchase the appropriate weapons in the U.S. through various programs. In addition to the major arms deal, which we call the mega deal for purchasing weapons from the United States, we also discussed a deal for drones, and technical teams are beginning to work on this deal. These are our drones, which will be purchased directly from the U.S.
American media reported that the White House administration is considering the possibility of providing Ukraine with long-range Tomahawk missiles. After meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky, the U.S. president himself, for the first time, optimistically assessed Ukraine's chances of regaining control over its territory within internationally recognized borders.
I am observing what Russia is doing and how it is behaving. I am very dissatisfied with what Russia and Putin are doing. I really don't like it at all. He is killing people for no reason and they are acting very badly, considering they've put everything on the line. Their economy is going to hell. They are bombing everything indiscriminately and capturing very little territory, if any at all. In fact, they are losing some territory. So I think this is having a very negative impact on Russia's reputation. This war should have ended already.
According to Reuters, in September, the United States resumed supplying weapons from its arsenals to Ukraine as part of a new financial agreement with NATO countries. 2 packages of $500 million each have already been approved. In July, the Washington Post reported that the head of the White House considered the possibility of transferring Tomahawk missiles to Kyiv, but they were not included in the final list of weapons for Ukraine. Nevertheless, the American newspaper did not rule out that the U.S. might provide long-range weapons later if Donald Trump decides to increase pressure on Russia. Kristina Dombrovskaya for Freedom TV channel.
Trump, Russia's economy is collapsing, biggest progress in war. Russia's economy is crumbling and US President Donald Trump said that's the biggest progress so far in the war. At his meeting with President Zelensky, Trump stressed that after 3.5 years of fighting without a clear goal, Moscow has pushed itself into economic disaster. It is the collapsing beginning of Russia's defeat, and how will this change the war? Full story in report.
The Russian economy is in terrible shape, declared US President Donald Trump during a meeting with his Ukrainian counterpart, Volodymyr Zelensky.
The Russian economy is in terrible condition, it's collapsing. Ukraine is doing a very good job stopping this very large army. It's simply astonishing. You know, this war was supposed to be over in 3 or 4 days. People said it would end very quickly. And credit must be given to the Ukrainian soldiers and everyone involved. It is still ongoing, and that's not good for Russia. It was supposed to end quickly. So, you know, Russia doesn't look very dignified.
Trump believes that Ukraine, with the support of the European Union and NATO, is not only capable of fighting but also of reclaiming all its territory within the borders prior to the full-scale invasion. He has previously stated that he would impose powerful sanctions and tariffs against Russia. According to him, the targets would be Russian oil and banks. During his meeting with the head of the White House, the president of Ukraine urged him not to delay sanction pressure on the Russian Federation and, if possible, to act one step ahead of Europe. In turn, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio stated that so far the American president has shown extraordinary patience, avoiding additional restrictions against the Russian Federation. However, the situation is changing. Russia is escalating and Washington is ready to act.
President Trump has shown extraordinary patience, not considering the possibility of imposing additional sanctions in the hope of a breakthrough on this issue. But all of this doesn't seem to be just a stalemate. We have entered a period of potential escalation, with a historic record of airstrikes in recent days in Iran. And now we are also witnessing incursions into the airspace of European countries by both drones and aircraft. The president is a very patient person. He is deeply committed to peace, but his patience is not limitless.
Meanwhile, the Kremlin has stated that Russia's economy remains stable despite difficulties caused by sanctions. As Putin's press secretary Peskov put it, there is global economic turmoil. He also noted that the Russian dictator is allegedly ready to meet with Volodymyr Zelensky, but claims that without preparation, such a meeting would supposedly be fruitless. However, the real numbers differ from the statements made in Moscow. The Financial Times reports that Ukrainian drone attacks on oil refineries in the Russian Federation have already led to diesel exports falling to their lowest level in the past 5 years. Since the beginning of August 2025, 16 out of 38 Russian oil refineries have been hit, resulting in disruptions to refining capacity of more than 1 million barrels per day.
Russia is the world's second-largest exporter of diesel fuel, with about half of its shipments going to Turkey. So far, Moscow has not restricted diesel exports abroad, unlike gasoline, which is increasingly in short supply on the domestic market and in the temporarily occupied territories, according to the Financial Times.
At the same time, the publication notes that there are already discussions in Russia about the possibility of a complete ban on diesel fuel exports. While the Kremlin tries to convince everyone that the Russian Federation's economy is doing fine, the country's Ministry of Finance has proposed raising the value-added tax rate from 20 to 22% starting next year. After all, Putin has no intention of ending the war against Ukraine, and the money for it has to come from somewhere. That's why tried-and-true methods are being used, digging into citizens' wallets.
The strategic priority is to ensure financial support for the country's defense and security needs, as well as social support for the families of participants in the so-called special military operation, according to the official website of Russia's Ministry of Finance.
Let us recall that Russia's expenditures on the war against Ukraine in 2024 amounted to $149 billion. According to the German Institute for International Security Affairs, over the first 6 months of this year, the Kremlin's war machine consumed on average nearly 1.5 trillion rubles per month, or just under 47 billion rubles per day. This is more than the annual budgets of Russian regions such as Kalmykia, which is just under 29 billion, or the Altai Republic, which is nearly 43 billion rubles. Yulia Granovskaya for Freedom TV channel.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now. Mystery drones shut down Copenhagen Airport. 35 flights divert. Northern Europe in shock. Unknown drones just forced Denmark and Norway to raise the alarm. At Copenhagen Airport, the country's busiest hub, all flights were halted after drone entered the airspace. Over 35 planes had to be redirected. It is just a warning or a test of NATO's defenses in one of the most strategic regions of Europe. Full story in report.
Unknown drones attacked Denmark and Norway on the evening of Monday, September 22nd. As a result, an alert was declared. At Denmark's largest airport in Copenhagen, all arrivals and departures were halted after drones were spotted in the airspace. More than 35 flights were redirected to other airports.
We are observing an increasing number of instances involving acts of airspace intrusion, which are occurring with greater frequency within the strategically important region of the North Atlantic Alliance. And this significant situation is happening both in numerous countries that are geographically quite close to the Russian Federation, and now it also increasingly concerns various countries that are located much farther away from Russia.
None of the 4 drones that flew over the airport were shot down. The Copenhagen police stated that the UAVs disappeared. Denmark and Norway will conduct a joint investigation into both cases of mysterious incursions.
The drone incursion we've witnessed these past days was not the first one. There have already been documented violations of Polish airspace by both incoming missiles and Iranian-made Shaheds. It's just that there hasn't been such a truly massive attack essentially on this scale. In my opinion, this was an attack, a serious act of aggression. It was, well, aimed at probing the effectiveness and resolve. But I think Russia can do the same thing in other countries as well.
In the Norwegian capital of Oslo, an alert was also declared over the military zone of Akershus fortress due to drones. The drones were detected by the military. In connection with the incident, 2 people from Singapore were detained.
It would be very important here, of course, for the United States of America to act more decisively. But unfortunately, so far, aside from some statements, we have not seen how ready the US is to, let's say, deal with the challenges that currently exist.
Drones on European territory are now more of a common occurrence than news. Until now, all unidentified drones have turned out to be of Russian origin. And it is quite possible that due to its impunity, Russia continues to test NATO's patience. Lithuanian Defense Minister Dovydė Šakalienė expressed the opinion that the countries of the North Atlantic Alliance could have responded more decisively and shot down the aggressor's UAV over Estonia. She also recalled the example of Turkey, whose airspace was also violated by Russia 10 years ago.
It seems to me quite clearly that what we fundamentally have here is a significant lack of genuine political will. For now, at this particular stage, perhaps Estonia is genuinely afraid that Russia might somehow retaliate, but it will undoubtedly respond in a completely different and indeed a more asymmetric way, which could be quite impactful. Most likely, it could step up its subversive activities in Estonia. And considering the significant fact that Estonia, a sovereign nation, borders the vast Russian Federation, and that there are a substantial number of ethnic Russians currently living within Estonia's borders, this particular situation could potentially become a significantly destabilizing factor for the entire region.
Aircraft that violate the airspace of NATO countries should be shot down. This was stated by the President of the Czech Republic, Petr Pavel. According to him, only such an adequate response will make Russia realize that it has crossed the line and made a mistake.
That's all for today on Ukraine Today. If you stand with the truth and with Ukraine, like, comment and subscribe. Want to make a real impact? Become a sponsor and join our fight against Russia's lies and aggression. Your support helps us expose the Kremlin, defend democracy, and keeps Ukrainians' voice strong. Stay informed, stay strong, and stay with Ukraine.